figure out who is next after that. How's that sound? Okay. I don't remember writing this story. That's true. I remember when I wrote it. It was in about 1997. I was finishing up grad school at San Jose State. I had just been to Spokane, Washington, in the eastern Washington area a few times because my uncle lives up there, and I did not really enjoy the trips. And it turned out that I was in a very kind of hateful mood, and everything was hideous and everything was grotesque, so I just used those as the names of the characters. And every restaurant had, every restaurant we went to was one of those, roadside family restaurants, like Bob's Family Restaurant, Jake's Family Restaurant, stuff like that. And John Madden's voice was on every television, and Slim Whitman was on every jukebox and stuff like that. And so I came home and wrote some stream of consciousness when I was on the job at a tech support job at San Jose State, right where the new library is, the main library on campus. That used to be the Walquist Library, an old crumbling, dilapidated building that was connected to where all the financial offices of the university were. So I got a chance to tech support and troubleshoot Windows 95 and people's printers and all the secretaries' offices, and they would complain that my cubicle was too messy. There was like unopened boxes. It looked like the tech support person's cubicle. Okay, but so I was in a very kind of not so happy mood, and which is what led to this. And I prefer to say steam of consciousness rather than stream of consciousness, because like stream is a little too linear, whereas steam is more like something that just comes from every direction off of your brain or something. So I don't remember writing it, but I remember when I wrote it. I think I wrote it when I was on the clock, because there was nothing else to do with that job, and what there was to do, I wouldn't do it anyway. So basically that's what, I didn't last long at that job, but anyway, that's the way it was. And so I'm going to read a little bit from the middle, and there's a guy called Human, a guy called the Driver, and then they're running through eastern Washington, running away from these incorporeal entities called the Blank Boys, which are sort of like, I don't know, interdimensional jocks or something, So anyway, so I'm going to read a little bit from the middle. The Blank Boys followed closely behind the Buick. Human could no longer focus on their rotting presence, so he turned back around and took his glasses off. The Buick could do nothing but maintain a determined state of inexplicable speed while careening down the off-ramp onto Useless Avenue. Human wanted to leave Blank Boy and trails out on Highway 90 to be sopped up by the gray horizon, the other Buicks, and maybe somebody else. But unfortunately, the Buick's driver ignored Human, who was in the back seat cleaning his glasses with a wrinkled Hawaiian shirt. So the Buick barreled on down the road with the finesse of a runaway Davy Tree machine while the driver clutched the wheel at 9 and 3. Human put his glasses back on and raked his hands through his hair, ridding the planet of these Blank Boys behind him. That's what dominated his thoughts. Yes, no more Blank Boys. As captivating as it sounds, he rethought the whole thing. This is not a realistic scenario. Instead, the driver taking Human on a spiraling downward journey into an endless void constituted reality at this point. A journey that had begun in the amputated limb of Rapid City, South Dakota, and then weaved and bobbed its way down I-90 through Billings, Butte, and Missoula. A journey that would probably come to a cataclysmic finale here in the quagmire of Spokane. Human disliked every one of these stopovers, full of nothing but Blank Boys, leaving Human trapped under the ice. And Human told the driver exactly how he felt. They're just different than you. There's nothing wrong with that. Besides, you're in their country now. To make matters worse, the driver of the Buick boasted one of those crazy, rotting voices that pierced one's heart and soul with rusty, Blank Boy top-style scissors, a voice whose voodoo screamed with vitriol and powered its way into the very guts of one's established order. Human had abhorred the driver's voice and tried to wipe the sonic foundry from his range of hearing, but to no avail. The fact that he was right made things even worse. They're just different than you, he kept saying over and over again. The people in these towns are not that bad, he kept saying over and over again. The driver then asked Human if he wanted to feed his face somewhere. Feed his face with the food from Spokane at a family restaurant somewhere. Sample family food served by a waitress in a vomit yellow polyester dress and a faded black tattoo on her forearm that said something like Dennis or Jake or Perkins or whoever owned the restaurant. Coffee with that, sir? Yes. Have you always been that skinny? Yes. Cream and sugar? No. Ketchup? No. French dip? No. Reeboks? No. What goes on the jukebox? Slim Whitman? Yes, that's right. That would be the conversation. Human decided to let the driver choose the particular place to feed everyone's face, any particular place to embroider the threads of blankness. Where, I don't care, you decide. You and me in the blanks. My disastrous attempts to circumvent this world stopped somewhere back around South Dakota. The Buick turned off Ridiculous Avenue and bounced through the pothole-ridden parking lot of Perkins Family Restaurant. The driver opened his door and fell out onto the icy pavement face first. The gray blank ice seemed to cut cracks in his face like a spider web. Human got out and lifted the driver up. Difficulties arose due to the fact that Human was a gaunt, bony individual and tipped the scales at $1.50 while the driver weighed in at nearly 3 bills. Alas, it was done, and they both took a deep breath of frigid Spokane air, only then noticing that the blank boys were no longer following them. The entities had disappeared or dematerialized somewhere. They both let out sighs of relief. Had the blank boys strayed off the Eden path? Yes, they hoped. Had they proceeded straight down the abysmal road when the Buick made that sharp left at the Walmart, or had they actually been headed for Walmart all along? Human and the driver didn't care either way. No care, not one miserable regard for what had happened to these entities. They had lost all regard a long time ago. They let out more sighs of relief, and they staggered into Perkins Family Restaurant and sat themselves down at one of those ripped-up, vile-colored vinyl booths. A cracked brown table was a sight for their sore eyes. A black ashtray filled with ashes and cigarette butts sat right beside an empty napkin dispenser, as if the two were bride and groom. Also married were the unmatched salt and pepper shakers, the latter of which someone had jokingly filled up with toothpaste. Perkins himself would be proud. So would his family. Human began to think, who the fuck is Perkins anyway? Grotesque flew up from the counter to the edge of the table with a faded black tattoo on her arm that said Rocky. She asked Human and the driver what they wanted. Booze? No. Blank boys? No. John Madden? No. Food? Yes. Human ordered a Denver omelet, and the driver chose a Reuben sandwich. Each came with stale fries and a bent pickle slice. Grotesque flew back to the kitchen and gave the order to the cook before falling asleep at the counter. The entire eatery reeked like an old Denver omelet that had been sitting in the back of a Buick for 3 weeks. Meanwhile, Hideous stood motionless in the bathroom looking at the mirror, the bathroom of Perkins Family Restaurant. She had worked the shift right before Grotesque and had already clocked out. She stood there trying to see past all the spots where people had popped their zits onto the mirror. She stood there knowing some crazed blank boy would soon walk in on her, but wondering if she could someday get a human instead. Back in the restaurant, the driver slowly chewed his Reuben sandwich like a psychedelic diseased monster nibbling at his own scabs. Human, on the other hand, devoured the Denver omelet in less than a few minutes. Grotesque flew up and dropped the check down on the table. Human swiped it up, tried to decipher her chicken scratch. They both threw a 10 down on the table. They both got up, all the while discussing the next destination on their Cowtown hopping blitzkrieg. So, who wants to go next? Andrew wants to go next.